So where did the descendants of Joseph the Israelites go, and what happened to Judah, the kingdom of the Jews? So the northern kingdom of Israel was being run by Joseph's descendants, and the southern kingdom was being run by the sons of David, who was a mix between Joseph, Judah, and Moab. Moab was a country founded by the nephew of Abraham, whose name was Lot, and it bordered Israel. Now, the definition of a Jew is going to change a bit, since they form two different kingdoms. The title Jew is going to be less about being a descendant of Judah and more about being part of the kingdom of Judah. However, they still separate into tribes. For instance, while the Jews were living under the Persians, we read about a man named Mordecai in the book of Esther. The Bible calls him a Jew, but at the same time calls him a Benjamite. And we have the same thing in the New Testament, where the Apostle Paul is a Jew because he comes from the kingdom of Judah, but then he quickly separates himself and points out, I am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. Here's an example. Acadia was a small country in Canada, like Benjamin was a small country in the kingdom of Judah. But Acadia was absorbed by the British. So Acadians will call themselves Canadians because they are part of Canada now, but they still identify themselves as Acadians, like Mordecai and Paul identify as Benjamites. You know, not many people know about Acadia. Like back then, I'm sure not a lot of people knew about Benjamin. Now, if you want to piss off a man from Scotland, call him an Englishman. Even though they're part of the same kingdom, they are separate countries with their own identities, and like England uses Britain to unite them, so Ephraim united the kingdom of Israel under the name Israel and not the kingdom of Ephraim, as he was promised that through the name Israel he will bless. So a man from Scotland is Scottish but British at the same time, which is an interesting point. British is a Hebrew word. Inside the word British, we have two words, Brit, and we have the word Ish, which literally means men of the covenant in Hebrew, or people of the promise, or the chosen people. Brit means covenant, which means promise. Ish means man. And their flag is called the United Jack, which literally means United Jacob, or United Israel. But perhaps as England became fruitful and multiplied, they forgot their origin, which is kind of ironic because Ephraim means fruitful and Manasseh means forgetful. So where did Joseph, the northern kingdom, go according to the Bible? Well, let's remember what was promised to Joseph's sons from Abraham. And this is the theme of the whole Bible. Abraham was promised that his children would become many nations, kings would rise out of him, he would be blessed, all the families of the world would be blessed through him, and his descendants would be as numerous as the stars of heaven. There are three main places the Bible wants you to focus on. The first is the captivity. We know for sure that the Israelites were scattered into the Assyrian Empire. We know that the Israelites built one of the largest trade networks with their Tyrian Sidonian allies through Solomon and the northern kingdom. They were known as the Phoenicians, which we'll cover a bit later. And we know that the New Testament wants you focusing on Greece. So we're going to be focusing on Assyria, Phoenicia, and Greece. The Greeks are the most obvious. Firstly, because the New Testament was written in Greek, and we owe almost all the Bibles we have today to the Greeks, the Jewish Bible included. Now, most of the New Testament is written to the Greeks and written in Greek. A few examples: the book of Corinthians, Thessalonians, Colossians, and Philippians. And we also have the book of Romans, which is obviously directed to the Romans, and the book of Galatians, which is a book written to the Galatians, a people known as Gauls, and they come from modern-day France. But we're going to be focusing on the Greeks for now. What should catch your eye, it caught my eye in the 12th chapter of John, in the Gospel of John, verses 20 to 23, where it talks about how certain Greeks wanted to see Jesus. And when Jesus heard these Greeks had showed up, Jesus immediately says, "The hour is come that the Son of Man be glorified," talking about himself. And so he's pretty much saying, because these Greeks have showed up, it's time to get the show on the road. And I never, the first time I read the Bible, I never understood that. And why? Why is it so important that these Greeks showed up? Why has the Bible mostly survived in Greek? Why was Greek the language of commerce? Why is the New Testament books, why are they all mainly written to the Greeks? So why are the Greeks so important is what I'm trying to ask. And we just need to remember the foundation of the Old Testament. So that's the question. Why are the Greeks so important? And just keep in mind, remember the foundation of the Bible. Now, the Jews know this. The Pharisees, which is modern-day Judaism, the Bible says the Jews knew the Greeks were Israelites. The Jews know the Israelites were dispersed in Greece. We learn this in John 7. Jesus says, "You will seek me, but you shall not find me, and where I go you cannot come." The Jews argue amongst themselves. Will he go to the dispersed among the Gentiles and teach the Gentiles? Well, I hate to break it to you, but the men who translated our Bibles knew the truth and wanted us to forget this. You see that word Gentiles? Well, the translators purposely mistranslated that word. So the Europeans wouldn't make this connection. The word there is Hellen, which means Greek. Now, some Bibles will have it correct, like the Holman's, but the King James Version, which dominated the Western world for 400 years, hides the fact that the Jews knew the Israelites were dispersed amongst the Greeks. When the Greeks came to see Jesus in John 12, that we just saw, they used the proper word Hellen, Greek. Now look at John 7:35, where the Jews admit the Israelites are in Greece. It's the same word, but they purposely switched to Gentiles. It should read, "Will he go unto the dispersed amongst the Greeks and teach the Greeks?" See, now it makes sense why Jesus knew his hour had come when the Greeks showed up, or the dispersed Israelites showed up. Because the Greeks had just spent the last 400 years doing what? All right, blessing the world. So the New Testament is about finding the sons of Joseph, the northern tribes of Israel. And where did Joseph go? Well, Joseph was a slave in bondage and became the ruler of the known world and mixed with the Egyptians. Joseph married into the royal Egyptian priestly family. So his children are half Egyptian royalty. And that's funny and interesting because the Europeans today are more genetically related to the pharaohs than anyone. Like Joseph, the Israelites left as captives in bondage and were mixed with the nations and eventually became all the great kingdoms that ruled and blessed the world. Now, in the story of Joseph, Joseph missed his full brother Benjamin. He desired so much to be reunited with him. This is why Jesus chooses Paul. Paul is a Benjamite, not a descendant of Judah. Paul is a Jew because he is a citizen of the kingdom of Judah, but in truth he's a Benjamite descended from the full brother of Joseph, which is why he was sent to find his long-lost brother Joseph. Paul wasn't sent to preach to the Jews. He was sent to preach to the Gentiles and to the Israelites who were scattered amongst them. That's what we read in Acts chapter 9, verse 15. Paul the Benjamite was specifically chosen to take them the message. Now, when Paul the Benjamite arrives in Corinth, he addresses the Greeks there. Look at how he speaks to them. He begins by telling the Greeks that he doesn't want them to be ignorant of this fact, that the fathers of the Greeks were with Moses when he passed through the sea, and they were baptized unto Moses, and that their fathers were in the wilderness, meaning the Greeks of Corinth were Israelites with Moses. He isn't talking to a Jewish congregation. Jews wouldn't be ignorant of this fact. Now, we have two other sources that agree. There is a book in the Apocrypha called the Book of Maccabees. Now, these books were conveniently taken out of our Anglo-Saxon Bibles, but they're in the Catholic Bibles and they're in the original King James. But here's a good one. It says the Greeks are descendants of Abraham in chapter 12, the first book of Maccabees, where it blatantly says, Arius, king of the Spartans, sends greetings to Onias, the chief priest. It has been found in the writings concerning the Spartans and the Jews that they are kinsmen and they are descended from Abraham. Josephus confirms this. Arius, king of the Lacedaemonians, to Onias sendeth greetings. We have discovered that both the Jews and the Lacedaemonians, which are Spartans, are of one stock and are derived from the kindred of Abraham. So when you watch the movie 300 or you read about the fierce Spartans, understand that according to the Jews, the Greeks, Josephus, the Bible, Jesus, and Paul, the Greeks are Israelites. And what was the theme of the Bible again? Oh, that Abraham is going to bless the world, that through him all the families of the world are going to be blessed, that he's going to make him a great name, he's going to multiply. Right, that's right. The Jews don't really fit this description. Now, if the Greeks are Israelites, particularly the Spartans, we have to look at what's going on in Sparta at the time of the Assyrian invasion. There should be a serious event going on in Sparta, a reaction to a refugee crisis. Well, we have exactly that. The Messenian Wars begin. From exactly the same time the Assyrians began their invasion to almost the same time the Assyrians finally destroyed Israel. So between 743 BC and 723 BC, we have the First Messenian War, where the Spartans are conquering the Messenian people. And we don't really have an exact reason why the war started, but scholars do suggest that the war was started because of mass immigration, and the Spartans needed more land. So we have the translators purposely mistranslating the words to divert your attention from the Greeks, and we have the translators removing books that blatantly call the Spartans the seed of Abraham. That's interesting. Now, Sparta was doing a lot of colonizing, like in Syracuse in Sicily, where the famous mathematician, inventor, and scientist Archimedes comes from. Now, remember, all the families of the world are going to be blessed through him. Now, the Spartans also gave birth to another tribe called the Sabines or the Sabines. Why is this important? Because the Sabines are descended from Sparta, and the Israelites are Spartans. That means the Romans are Israelites as well. Hence why we have a book called the Book of Romans. There was an event back in ancient Rome where the Roman men needed wives, and their neighbors, the Sabines, a Spartan colony, refused to share their sisters and daughters with the Romans. They said, these are our sisters, our daughters, these are our women. But the Romans needed them. They were majority men. So the Romans arranged a giant party, a festival, and they invited everyone from around. When the Sabine men were all drunk and passed out, the Romans attacked them and ran off with all their women. This is known as the rape of the Sabine women. And in the end, the Sabines launched a counterattack, much later, to retrieve their daughters and sisters. But the battle ended with the Sabine women who were taken by the Romans. The Sabine women ran in between them, in between the two armies, and they held up their half Roman, half Sabine, babies, which stopped the battle. And the two tribes had now kind of become one. And in the West, we still commemorate this event after our weddings, when the man carries his wife over the threshold. It's to remember when the Romans ran off with the Sabine women, meaning our wedding ceremony should be reminding Romans that they are Spartan Israelites. When we look at the alphabet, we see a direct connection. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet in Hebrew. And in Greek, we have Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta. Also, when we look at the similarities between the ancient forms of these alphabets. Now, the Greeks got their alphabet from a people called the Phoenicians. But the Phoenicians said that they were from the land of Canaan, from modern-day Israel and Lebanon. The Greeks called them Phoenicians, but the Phoenicians called themselves the Kanoi or the Kana, meaning we're from Canaan, the land of Israel. Now, ancient Phoenicia wasn't really a country. Ancient Phoenicia was a confederacy made up of Israelites, Tyrians, and Sidonians. Yeah, that's right. The ancient Phoenicians were Israelites. Remember the promise. Tyre was a Canaanite city and Israel's closest ally that became master of the Mediterranean. It dominated the sea and all naval trade for almost 1,000 years. Nobody could leave the Mediterranean because the Israelite and Tyrian boats guarded the Strait of Gibraltar. This is also known as the Pillars of Hercules. Now that changed when a Macedonian Greek king destroyed their home. His name was Alexander, and Alexander's family were not Greek natives, but came from a dynasty known as the Argead dynasty, which landed in Argos from a tribe called the Danons. The Danons were Mediterranean pirates known for conquering and setting up colonies. The Bible records that the tribe of Dan didn't really care about Israelites' politics and cared more about their ships, as we read in the poem in the book of Judges. Gilead abode beyond the Jordan, and why did Dan remain in ships? Why would Dan care more about their ships than fighting for their land? Perhaps they knew something the others didn't. Perhaps they knew about other lands that were untouched, rich, where no king could tell them what to do. The island in the middle of the Mediterranean bears proof of that. And to this day, its name is Sardinia, which is Hebrew for the rulers of Dan. And this was a Phoenician island. Alexander claimed to be a descendant of the mighty Hercules. The Bible records a Danite named Samson, who is the biblical version of Hercules. Samson had unnatural strength and was pretty much a one-man army. In the end, Samson was betrayed by a woman named Delilah and was taken prisoner. And when all seemed hopeless, Samson laid chained up on display in the temple of the Philistines, bald and blind because his enemy had put out his eyes. God gave him one last moment of strength where he put his hands on the two pillars and pushed them in the temple, causing the temple to fall on all of Israel's enemies. And in one shot, he killed everybody and sacrificing himself. And I think this is hence the pillars of Hercules. Now, Alexander's greatest accomplishment wasn't necessarily conquering the Persian Empire. Alexander accomplished something that every great conqueror before him had failed to do, and that was to destroy and conquer the queen of the Mediterranean, Tyre, Israel's closest ally. And I think the Bible, to this day, it still remains the oldest record of Alexander we have. And the Tyrians are going to give birth to the Carthaginians. So the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of the Jews, they're two very different people with two very different destinies. The New Testament is about finding the lost tribes of Joseph. As Jesus says in Matthew 10, verses 5 to 8. These 12 Jesus sent forth and commanded them, saying, Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Why would Jesus tell his disciples, Go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel? The Jews aren't lost. They're right in front of them. The lost sheep of the house of Israel is the lost tribe of Joseph, or Ephraim, who have been scattered around the world for the last 700 years, from this moment. Israel and Judah are two separate entities. Even though the Jews they're very desperate. They're desperately trying to convince you that they alone are Israel. When Judea was conquered by the Babylonians in 586 BC, there was a Levite prophet named Jeremiah who tried to remind the Jews that even though Ephraim had been scattered for over 100 years, they are still God's firstborn and heir. It says, For I am the father of Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Why would Jeremiah have to tell the Jews that? He warned the king that it was God who sent the Babylonians to punish the Jews for their wickedness, their sin, because they didn't even pay their taxes, but used Babylon's own money to finance war against them. The Jews threw Jeremiah into a prison for speaking the truth against them, and then the Jews paid for their treachery when the Babylonians besieged Jerusalem, killed the king's sons, plucked out his eyes, and brought him to Babylon as a prisoner. Jerusalem was conquered, and the temple that Solomon and the king of Tyre built was destroyed, and the Jews were taken captive into Babylon. Before the Jews were destroyed, Jeremiah proclaimed, Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Why would he separate the two? It means they're not the same people. It continues, Not according to the covenant I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, although I was a husband unto them, saith the Lord. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith the Lord, I will put my law in their inward parts and write in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. So a new covenant is declared to both houses, meaning they will both be present at this new covenant. And in the Old Testament we read, "And I will strengthen the house of Judah, and I will save the house of Joseph, and I will bring them again to place them, for I have mercy upon them, and they shall be as though I had not cast them off, for I am the Lord their God, and I will hear them." About 600 years after God warned the Jews there would be a new covenant, and that Ephraim is his firstborn, meaning heir, we have a man named Jesus who declares a new covenant with Greek, Roman Israelites, and Jews together. The Jews, like they did to the Babylonians, rejected the offer. The Jews also refused to pay taxes and used Roman tax money to finance a war against Rome. The Jews did exactly to the Romans as they did to the Babylonians, as the Romans did exactly to the Jews what the Babylonians had done to them. They destroyed Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, and enslaved the Jews for being rebellious traitors. Remember, the Jews had no reason to rebel against Rome. They were wealthier than anyone under Roman rule, using tax-free religion as a weapon to strike at Rome, as we read the words of Emperor Titus. "What is our chief favor of all is we have given you leave to gather up tribute, which is paid to God, with such other gifts that are dedicated to him. Nor have we called those that carried these donations to account, nor prohibited them, till at length you Jews became richer than we ourselves, even when you were our enemies, and you made preparations for war against us with our own money. Nay, after all, when you were in the enjoyment of all these advantages, you turned your too great plenty against those that gave it to you, and like merciless serpents have thrown out your poison against those that treated you kindly." When we look at priests, rabbis, and pastors today telling us to support the Zionist Jews, we have to remember that the people were led astray by following their religious leaders. Jeremiah warns us what it was like. "Then the Lord said unto me, The prophets prophesy lies in my name. I sent them not, neither have I commanded them, neither spake unto them. They prophesy unto you a false vision and divination, and a thing of naught, and the deceit of their heart." Again we read, "Behold, I am against them that prophesy false dreams, saith the Lord, and do tell them, and cause my people to err by their lies, and by their lightness. Yet I sent them not, nor commanded them. Therefore they shall not profit this people at all, saith the Lord." The Jews filled the world with poisonous lies, but all will be revealed, as Jeremiah wrote. "O Lord, my strength and my fortress, and my refuge in the day of affliction. The Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, Surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and things wherein there is no profit."